Join us September 19th through September 23rd for the Gone Too Soon virtual retreat. This is a free 5-day online event series where we can honor the loved ones we miss and gain support in ways that help us feel safe and feel seen. We have over 20 experts who are grief specialists, mental health service providers, and people who have dedicated their careers to help those that are grieving learn what it means to grieve well. Make sure you check out the registration page at retreat.celebratelegacy.net to get all of the information and grab your free ticket.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Grief Uncensored. I'm Yako.
And I'm Julia. We believe that your grief is your own and no one can tell you what to do with it. But we're here and we're sorry that you are, and we're grateful that you found us. We want you to know that you're never alone.
Be sure to find us on all of our other platforms. Follow us on TikTok. We just got started there, so not too much to see yet, but more to come. We have a great community on Instagram at Grief Uncensored Podcast. And on Instagram, we have a series called Feature Your Loved One, where you can send in photos of your loved one and a caption, and we'll post it to our page in honor of them. On Facebook, we have a Facebook page you can like, and we have a Facebook group that you can apply to be in. We have over 100 people in their 20s feeling the same thing that we are. And you can find the link to all of these things that I mentioned in our Instagram bio. Lastly, for our visual people, we have a YouTube version of our podcast where you can actually watch us. So if you feel like you want to watch us do it all, go there and subscribe.
Amazing. So today we are here with season 2, episode 2. We already released season 2, episode 1 with our first guest. Her name was Tessa Thompson. She was telling her story about losing a parent, her dad, when she was 12 years old, and now she's 21. So we get into all the details about that if you want to go listen. She was an absolutely amazing guest, so eloquent, and we just talked so much and made a lot of good points, and even talking to our younger selves, which was amazing.
Which was really sweet, yeah. And I just resonated so hard with everything she said, and I feel like as that episode really does highlight grief over time, as she was 12 when she lost her dad, and now she's coming from a space of 9 years past that. So, I even after 1 year of my dad passing, I feel like I've starting to resonate with a lot of what she's saying, which is maybe what I needed to hear.
Totally. I think that a lot of the things that she mentioned were things that we haven't even experienced or thought about yet, because both of our experiences, we've only lost our parent under 2 years. So if you want to be a guest on Grief Uncensored, we are taking applications, and it's a quick little Google form in our bio. We just ask that you have a grief story and that you have something specific that you'd like to share or that you'd like to talk about. So come prepared with a topic that you would really like to provide your insight and perspective on, and we'd love to hear from you.
Yes, and that link is in our bio as well. But yeah, let's just dive into talking more about what it was finishing up season 1, like where we are now, what's up, what's the tea?
Yeah, I would absolutely love to just recap, because we have grown a lot since the first episode of Grief Uncensored. And the first time we were putting out episodes, I think we got maybe 40 listens, and when we hit 40, we were like, oh my god, that is insane. And now we are way up there in the numbers, and so our community has grown a lot. And we're first just want to say that we're really grateful that we've been able to use our voices and our painful experience to reach out to other people, because the main goal when starting Grief Uncensored, and I know I say this all the time, but it literally was to meet other people like us, because as we all know, grief is so isolating and we just felt so lonely. So when me and Yako found each other, we were like, oh my God, we need to find more people like us. And we did, and we still are. So first, I just want to say that that is truly amazing. And I feel really grateful that we've been able to connect with other people. And I absolutely love getting messages from people. I think the best way to reach us I would say is Instagram DMs. We check that the most. But when we get like long messages, I mean, every single time it like touches my heart because I know that, I'm not alone. Even though I'm the one always telling you guys, oh, you guys are never alone. I have to be reminded of it too. So hearing from you guys definitely like makes me feel really good.
Yeah. And it just feels amazing having like a dedicated safe space for us to just say whatever we want. And in a normal setting, that would just be kind of awkward or kind of set people off and make people uncomfortable. But here it just feels like everything we say, someone's thinking that and someone is resonating with it. And it's hard to believe that. It was hard to believe that at first when, it was just like our friends listening and supporting us. But now that we've reached an actual community, it feels really amazing to have our words validated too, because sometimes we like gaslight ourselves into not feeling the way we do. But then when other people are reaching out and telling us like they felt that way too and all this stuff, it just makes us feel more okay feeling that way, even though it feels like fucked up and terrible. But
yeah. Sometimes I'll listen to our previous episodes and I'm like, I cannot believe that we said that. And, things change over time. And, so far I still resonate with everything that's been said on the podcast. But, I understand that some people might listen and they're like, oh, I don't necessarily agree or I don't necessarily think that way. But that's just a thing with grief, that everyone sees it differently and everyone feels it differently. Everyone's situations are totally different. Even though we have so many commonalities, but we're just trying to have our listeners feel understood, and that sometimes means literally saying and admitting every thought that we've had, and some of them are out of pocket as fuck. So it is what it is. And like, we just want to reiterate, like, that's pretty much the point. Like, the point is to be uncensored. Like, it's to be what I'm actually thinking. Like, not something that I've thought about forever and that I'm sugarcoating or that I'm trying to. No, it's literally just point blank the actual thought being words now into a public podcast. So, so far, it's going great. But
yeah, I find that like in this time that we've had off, I think we stopped making episodes in May and now it's August. So it's been like a good 4 months. Am I doing that math correctly? No, three. Wait, yeah, 3 months. It's been like
well, no, it's like September now. So
oh yeah, okay, so 4 months. Yeah, I was right. College. Okay. Yeah, so we stopped making episodes in May and now it's September. So it's been a good 4 months. And I feel like in that time, I've just been listening to all of our episodes, and it's weird that I am saying some things that I need to hear for myself. It's just weird. It's a weird thing because I'm like, especially the waves of grief episode, because I find like I'm always cycling through the waves, and when it hits me, I listen to that episode and like some of the stuff that I'm saying, I'm like, true. And it's weird because sometimes I'm saying it on the good side, on the shallow end of the wave, and sometimes I'm like, you could tell that I was really deep in the waves. And it's just weird going back to it and listening to it from an outside, like from an audience perspective, as someone who needs to hear it too.
Yeah, it is really sweet how sometimes we'll listen back and then it's almost like we're talking to ourselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're super excited that we're putting season 1 behind us because we have so much in store for season 2.
Yeah. So with season 2, we want to keep obviously the intentions of just making sure that we're being honest, vulnerable, authentic, sharing our stories, everything, all of our deep dark thoughts, all of it. But I also think that having guests now on season 2 will help us, one, broaden our perspective on like different types of loss, because there's really a whole realm of different types of loss. And like obviously we are only subject to our own perspective, and I think like talking to other people with their own stories helps us understand just how complex this whole thing really is and how differently it impacts people, and yeah, and then also how similar it all is at the end.
Totally. I think season 1, we were really focused on our stories about losing a parent in your 20s in college. And that's what season 1 will always be about. And that's what we will always be about, because that's our experience. And season 2, we're definitely going to broaden that. But, either way, we're still who we are, and we're still our own experiences, even though we're going to be broadening our perspectives a little bit going into season 2. But most people that we're going to be having on for season 2, are still young people like us. And I think we cater mostly to those people just because we actually can understand them the most,
Right.
And that's like another reason why I really love our Facebook group, is because, grief is so broad, but the Facebook group is specific for people in their 20s. And, there's no comparing or contrasting other grief experiences. We all just have the same type of loss, and it does help to have that specific community.
I think also, since there's such a lack of resources that are geared specifically for our age range, like I think that's a huge emphasis in our podcast and platform and community, is that we really want to create that space for people like us, because we just like felt such a lack of it in our own lives. And still to this day, like, like we're just trying our best to try to bring that emphasis, because also like grief is something everybody experiences, of course, but it's so much more common the older you get, of course, like it just makes sense. And I think that a lot of the resources are mostly filled with people in their midlives, starting to lose their parents and stuff like that. But when you're 20, that's not the time frame of when that's supposed to happen. That's just not. And because of that, there's so many people in our lives that don't understand, that don't know how to be there for you. They just have never seen it in their own lives. So we're just trying to create a platform that, one, the people who have lost people feel understood, and two, help people who are supporting people who have lost people, that are their friends, that are like young, help them understand what's going on in their head and how they can actually help and not be the opposite of that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, we totally validate everyone's grief experience, no matter what. And, everyone's worst thing in their life is the worst thing that's ever happened to them in their life. Like, that's somebody's individual experience. And we're definitely not here to take that away from anybody or to compare everyone's worst thing. And like, we definitely talk about that in season 1, like how that's just not helpful. But with that said, we do really value having people who truly get exactly what we're talking about. And, just like I can't understand infant loss or something like that, I wouldn't join a group for that because I just don't understand it. And my perspective is not going to be the same. So there's value in having people who are going through really super, super similar things as you. And really, that's all that we're saying.
Exactly.
For season 2 and possibly going forward, me and Yako are living in different cities now. So we are going to be doing all of our podcasts on Zoom, unless we're somehow able to meet up with each other and do a bunch of podcast episodes in person.
Yeah.
We're close, but we are not super close. Some would say very far.
Yeah, so
But
Julia fucking moved and she left me. No, just kidding. No, but she moved and she's in a new city now. And yeah, I don't know. How has that been, dealing with some life changes?
Well, gotta say, it has not been all rainbows and butterflies. The most obvious one is moving to a new city, and you're having all these new experiences, moving into your new apartment, getting all this new furniture, being an adult. And a lot of times those are the moments that we really look for support and love and validation from our parents. And so there's a big thing missing for me there. And, I kind of knew that going into the move. Like, I knew it was going to bring up a lot of emotions, but I guess what I didn't realize was that it was going to be more of a blanketed effect rather than just random spurts of me missing my mom. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like it's like overarching the whole thing pretty much.
Yes, exactly. And I always know where it's coming from, but I never still know exactly how to deal with it. Let me just read you some of the notes that I've been writing, because I have been in my notes app kind of just jotting down every single grief thought that I have. But at least for when it comes to moving to a new city, like just all these new experiences, I want to like take a picture and send it to my mom, and that's just not possible.
Right.
And it's a bunch of small things, but it is a huge void. And honestly, even the other day, I don't even remember what it was. I think it was, I got like a new kitchen table, and they're like these really cute chairs, right? And I was like, for one split second, I swear to God, my brain was like, oh my God, like I can't wait to send a picture to mom because she's gonna like love it. I can't wait to hear what she has to say. One really quick second, like my brain was like excited to talk to her, and then obviously the reality set in 1 millisecond. And those happen a lot. Not a lot, because obviously my brain definitely lives in the reality. But there will be some times where it's like,
yeah,
kind of trips me out a little bit. I'm like, okay, that felt like shit. Like, thanks for that.
No, yeah.
But let me just honestly give you guys some insight into some of my grief feelings, and hopefully me sharing this will just resonate with some of you guys. It's a little sparse, it's a little random, so just stay with me here. This one's good. This one's real sad.
This one's good.
I don't think your heart can ever fully heal from the shock and trauma from seeing someone you love and cherish perish from the earth. The emotional anguish of hearing the news for the first time, physically seeing them in a casket, deceased. It is unforgettable and irreversible. It brings days of back-to-back trauma, irreversible emotional scars. Everyone's staring at you while you cry at the wake. It's something you try to forget every day since.
Yep, I resonate with that. Like, not only is their death traumatizing, but the funeral is like so traumatizing after, and every day after you're just like trying to forget and not relive those moments. And when you do, you're like, oh, like I have to like force myself to stop thinking about some things when I'm like,
yeah, you do have to force yourself sometimes to stop thinking about it. And I actually do that, because I'm really just like, this is a really fucking horrible, depressing thought, and I'm gonna have to force you to stop, because this is just not it for me right now. All right, I'll read another one. This one's shorter. Also, this was me like trying to be poetic a little bit.
I thought that first one was poetic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because these just aren't like, these are, I mean, some of them are like my random notes jotted down, but a lot of them is like, ooh, I can make this into
that
future content. Don't worry, you guys will see it. Don't worry. I will definitely not let these thoughts go to waste. I'll keep living each day without you, knowing no matter what happens, I'd give it all away to have you back.
That is so relatable too.
Yeah. Another one that I wrote, which is really popular in the grief world, is that grief doesn't get any smaller. You just have to make yourself bigger around it.
I thought when you said popular, I thought you meant like amongst the people you shared it to. You're like, this one's really popular.
No, I haven't shared this with anyone. You guys are like diving into my deep thoughts.
We're getting exclusive insight.
exclusive insight into my walks and what I think about while I'm going on walks. Grief doesn't get any smaller. You just have to make yourself bigger around it. Yes, that is very true, because the grief of losing a parent, it is not going to go away or get smaller in any sense. It's really not. But does me growing older and time going by make me grow around it? Inevitably, yes, but it doesn't make anything better or more bearable. Some things are more bearable, though, yes. But again, it kind of, and I also like this quote because it's like you have to grow bigger around it, and that takes like a lot of effort. And it kind of just speaks to like the hard emotional tasks that grieving people have to go through. Right. On top of trying to live their normal life. Like you're also trying to like get past this huge barrier. It's like emotional labor.
It's like you're trying to grow bigger so that the hole in your heart doesn't feel as big anymore, because when it happens, it's like a huge gaping hole. And as you grow stronger, you know, you start to become more of this bigger, complex person. And the hole doesn't get smaller, it just feels smaller because of all the stuff that you started to build around it.
Exactly. That was very good.
But yeah, I don't know, like so much has been happening, but I also feel like nothing has happened, like
oh my god,
since season 1, like literally you know, like so much has happened. I did go back home in that time. Like I went back to New York with my boyfriend, and I've been back a few times, and I feel like every time that I go back, it's less painful because of exposure therapy, simply exposure therapy. But every time the absence feels so fucking loud there, especially because that place is a place that I had with him. It's not a place that I ever existed without him. So when I'm there, it just feels so intense every single time. Having my boyfriend there was really nice, and he definitely helped me a lot through all the ups and downs. I think there was also Father's Day during that 4-month period break, and Father's Day, you know, it's not fun. This is the second Father's Day without him, but might as well have been the first because it was just as painful. I don't know, I like don't want to be putting such an emphasis on these days, you know, to the point where it like debilitates me, but at the same time it's hard not to because the whole world is. And even though I'm like, okay, it's just another day, and every day hurts, but like on that day specifically, it's hard to not think about, is like Father's Day, birthdays, blah blah blah. It's hard to not think about them on that day when it's supposed to be, when it's a day to honor that person or whatever, you know, like Father's Day is to honor dads, and when you don't have a dad, it's like,
yeah, of course, it's like close to impossible to ignore it.
Yeah, it's I wish I could ignore it and treat it just like any other day, and I will get through it like any other day, but it will be a harder day to get through.
Well, if you listen to season 2, episode 1, Tessa did say that the first several anniversaries, birthdays, Father's Days are the worst.
Yeah. And I think that goes into what you were saying about how you grow and you become a bigger person around your grief. Yeah, and that's what that shows, is that as like time goes, you build more of who you are and you get to become more of a complex, big person. And that doesn't mean that your grief's not there, as Tessa 9 years out it says, but it's just that you've become such a immensely complex, amazing being around it.
Yeah.
That it doesn't feel as large when the whole. But I feel like I'm transitioning into what the fuck I'm gonna do with the rest of my life, and that is like a question that I need to answer for myself. But I do wish that I had my dad's guidance to like kind of console with him and ask him like his thoughts. Not that it really matters, but it does matter because I value his opinion. But at the same time, like that opinion, that final verdict of what you want to do is up to you, and only you can decide that. And of course, having advice from someone you love and respect so much helps you kind of navigate through such a weird time transitional time in your life. And I feel like that's literally what the 20s are, is like figuring out where you stand in this world. And after college, there's really nothing distracting you from facing that ultimate reality of like, who are you going to be in society and what are you going to do? You don't, it doesn't have to be a career, but just in terms of like life and anything, like, what do you want to do? You know,
yeah, like
what do you want to be?
literally asking yourself like who you really are and like who are you going to become, because this is like one of the biggest transitional phases of your whole life, and you know how you evolve during that time is literally gonna set the space for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
No pressure or anything.
Yeah, and I feel like I've heard a lot of people say that every year of their 20s they're a completely different person. Obviously for us it was like way more dramatic from 20 to 21 to 22.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's such a transitional time. There's so many changes going around, like going on. Like you were in a new city. We are finished with college now, but like it's just like so many new things constantly. And I do think it is a time, and I'm embracing this time as a time to try things because I don't know what I want to do, so I'm just going to try everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, is to just try everything.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that speaks to our age and the time period that we're in right now, because I'm sure a lot of people who are also in their 20s can relate to that. And even people who aren't grieving can relate to that. So like for us, it's like all the existential crises you have in your 20s, plus the immense weight of grief on your shoulders, and you know, everything that happens when you lose a parent.
Right. I feel like another thing is that people are always like, you're so young, you know, like you have so much time to like figure out what you're gonna do. When I tell them about how stressed out I am about like my existential crises, like people are always like, oh, you're gonna figure it out, you're so young. But the thing is, this, if anything I've learned from this loss, is that literally time is not guaranteed. Your life can be flipped, turned upside down in the blink of an eye. And
yeah,
someone telling me that I'm so young is not as comforting as they think it sounds. And it just kind of feels, it doesn't, it's like kind of invalidating in the time, because it makes me feel like these things are like small, but in my life right now it feels this is the only thing, and it feels like a big thing.
Yeah. I mean, what is even the point to saying like you're so young? Like, do I have like a lot to live for? Like, yeah, maybe because I have so much time, but like I don't know, like after you go through something very traumatic, like you don't really see the things that way anymore, because you're like, well, you know, I've seen how life can be unfair, and I've seen how life can be cut really short.
Yeah.
So those types of things don't like motivate me to like have a better mindset anymore. And, you know, now I have to find some other things that might make me motivated or make me happy, because those kind of cliche things like don't really work on the grieving mind anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
At the end of the day, like I've definitely been learning that not everyone is equipped to help you or to love you in the way that you need or that you needed at the time. When I needed support, it was at the beginning. Obviously, I need support now, but I'm going to need a different type of support now. In the beginning, my loss was very sudden, and I needed support immediately. I needed people to show up for me immediately, and I needed close people to step up instead of step back. And what I experienced is people either disappearing or absolutely running away. There was very few people who stepped up, and love those people who stepped up, but I'm not going to focus on you right now, unfortunately. I'm going to be talking about the people who hurt
Step down
me by absolutely stepping down or worse.
or worse.
this could really be anyone. It could be friends or it could be family. And a lot of times, like, you want your family or people close to you to step up, or at least you expect them to, just because they're your family, right?
Mhm.
And, we expect those types of people to really embrace you and, fill you with so much love and support. And it is a phenomenon that they just don't a lot of the time. And
Mhm.
it leaves us feeling really sad and really disappointed. And everyone likes to say in response to this that, they didn't mean it, or they intended to, like, they still love you, they just didn't know what to
Right.
say. There's a lot of excuses, but they always kind of boil down to, like, well, they always wanted to be there, but they didn't know what to say, or, they were being selfish, but they still love you, something like that.
Yeah.
And for me, it always boils down to why intentions are never enough, and why actions always speak louder than words. Although I'm not the type of person to believe, and this is something that a lot of young people are saying now, quote, if he wanted to, he would. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Me personally, I'm going to use this example, and I'm going to use this in the grief lens. If they wanted to, they would, in my opinion, is too dismissive and it's too reductive. You can't just say, oh, if a person wanted to, they would, right?
Mhm.
Because there's a million other factors as to why someone can't be there for you. It could be their own issues that they're dealing with. There's a lot of emotional barriers of why these people have not supported you during your worst time, or why they haven't stepped up, or why they haven't reached out to you at all. It could be they're scared, they are dealing with their own guilt or shame or their own traumas of why maybe something that happened to you, brings up feelings for them. Again, it could be a million things. And a lot of times we just don't understand why they're not there for us or why they're
Yeah.
not supporting us. So I just want to validate for anyone who has felt let down by their friends or family or other people close to them during a time where you needed it the most. You don't have to accept other people's lack of support, because a lot of times we are disappointed in family or in situations where you expected, at least for me, I feel like since I'm so young, I expected a lot of older people to step up and to be like that emotionally present family member or friend that I needed. And when these people did not, it was very hurtful, right? And
Mhm.
it causes a lot of like resentment, and sadness overall adds to your grief journey and adds to all those swirling emotions. So first and foremost, I just want to validate that, like, you do not have to accept that that's just how these people are, or that's just how, or they just didn't know what to do. You don't have to make excuses, and you don't have to accept their excuses. But what I do want to end on is that a lot of times we seek an apology, or we seek some type of closure to from somebody who has let us down. And that can be the most dangerous game of all, for the reason that you may never get an I'm sorry, or you may never get I fucked up, or I didn't mean it like that, or I meant to be there for you, but I'm sorry I wasn't. Like, whatever it is, you may never get that. So if you do get an apology, that's great. But sometimes that doesn't really mean that much when all the hurt has already been done. No amount of I'm sorry or self realization is going to take away the pain that they already caused you years ago. But what I do recommend is that you find a way to make peace with it before you get an apology, or maybe you never get an apology. So if you never get an apology, or you never get a recognition of somebody who hurt you or was not there for you, you know, I encourage finding a way to somehow release that, because you don't want to hold that in your brain and you don't want to hold that in your body, because you already are dealing with such a heavy loss. Anger and resentment on top of all of that stuff is even more detrimental to yourself. And people just suck. People are not equipped. People are not just going to be able to know exactly what you need. And it fucking sucks, because I feel really disappointed by a lot of people in my life who were not there for me. And, they can apologize and they can feel like shit because they know now years later that they were, not there for me. But like, that doesn't change anything for me. I still had to go through that, and I still had to feel abandoned by a lot of people in my life. So I'm just telling you now that I'm, more than a year after that happened, it doesn't go away unless you make it go away in yourself, because I'm not in a position to say I'm just going to forgive everyone for whatever they did, but I am in a position to just let it go and not let it affect me, because I know in myself that I can't really expect anything from anybody else, especially if we weren't already super close. So the people that I hold the most sadness for were the people that I was very close with who stepped down or stepped away. It's easy to feel disappointed too, though, in the people who maybe you weren't super close with, but didn't step up like you would have expected.
But I think it's like so much more like when you're closer with people and they step down, it's like it's
even more of
a betrayal. It's like
yes,
yeah,
it is a betrayal.
But yeah, I mean that's 100% right. Is that I mean, we talked about that in the anger and resentment episode. Is like you don't have to hold on to that anger and resentment, or at least try to make peace with it. And I mean, I think that's the whole point, is that you don't deserve to hold on to any additional shit on top of what you're already going through. And holding on to that anger and resentment because of certain expectations you've had of other people is like drinking poison and then hoping that it's going to kill that other person. It's not doing anything. That person is not feeling the energy you're putting out. That person doesn't give a fuck, clearly. Maybe they do. I'm being harsh. Maybe they do. But yeah, at the end of the day, you holding on to that resentment, you holding on to certain expectations is literally not doing anything except one, disappointing you and making you feel bad. And when you already feel bad.
Totally. Yeah. And also like that main point is that takes a lot of time to get to that point, because your emotions are super heightened during the beginning times of the loss. So you're not like in the especially nice mood to go be forgiving everyone who betrayed you at your worst time or who weren't there for you at your worst time. Everything has levels to it. And in this case, it just really like applies to whoever hurt you or hurt your feelings after the loss. Like, it takes time to eventually forgive and move on. But just because you're forgiving and moving on doesn't mean that you're accepting their behavior.
Yeah, exactly.
And, forgiving and moving on is really important, for sure.
But also, like you said, you're saying this from like a year out. And when this is happening, finding peace is damn near impossible, because you're just so fucking pissed. You're resentful.
Yeah.
You're just so you don't even have to be pissed. Like, you're just devastated. You're hurt. It is so painful when that is happening to you.
Totally.
When people are just not acting the way you want them to act. And honestly, I find that in the beginning anyway, like if people said the wrong thing, it would trigger me so badly. I pretty much could not handle anybody saying the wrong way. So I preferred them not to speak at all in terms of me speaking to them. And I don't know if that was necessarily the right thing to do, because I ended up just kind of distancing myself from a lot of people. But at the same time, I guess that's exactly what I needed to do, because I couldn't handle anybody saying things the wrong way or acting a weird way. Now, speaking from a year and like freaking 6 months, um, a year and a half, I can say that I'm not as triggered when people say the wrong things, and I can kind of see, I mean, not kind of, I can see that it's coming from a good intention, and I am able to kind of appreciate the intention more. But back, oh my God, when it happened, fuck your intention. I don't give a fuck what your intention was. That shit was fucked up. Bye.
Totally, right?
You know,
I agree.
you're not in the mindset to be considering
Yeah,
people's intentions, like, oh, but this person has this trauma and now that's why they said this to me and their intention was this. No, you're not in the position. You have no emotional capacity to fucking start thinking about all these other people's intentions, why they're acting the way they are. No, there's no way.
totally.
I was not able to do all that.
No, and neither was I. And I think that's why I'm reflecting on it all now, because, back when we were filming the anger and resentment episode, I know that we were making some of these points where it's like, okay, well, people suck and they don't know how to be there for you emotionally, and a lot of people are going to let you down.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's a million reasons as to why, and they're not necessarily like excuses,
right,
because there's never really an excuse for not being there for someone who you should have. But from an outside perspective, I mean, at least trying to put myself in an outside perspective, like, nobody is ever going to be able to do the right thing. So you kind of, and this is another reason why grief is so isolating, because like, you're never going to be able to have the exact right person who does exactly everything right.
Mm-hmm.
So the people who are in my life still after I lost my mom, because a lot of people in my life who were in my life before that happened are not in my life anymore. So the people who are still in my life now, I see them as amazing people. And you want to know why? It's not because they said all the right things, and it's not because they were there for me 100% and were perfect and that they said all the right things and that they called me every day. No, it is not that. It is because they showed up and said the wrong things. Even if they said things that made me triggered, even if they said things that made me sad, even if they said things that I found to be maybe a little distasteful, or if they said things that were insensitive, now I see them as people who at least cared enough about me to try. And that means a lot to me now. So we had an episode a while back about all the shitty and horrible things people say. And I am absolutely not backtracking on any of that, because that shit was fucked up. And it still happens to me. But now, since I'm a little more out from the date, like, I get a little less triggered because I'm honestly just fucking used to it at this point. But when you're not used to it and you just went through the worst loss of your whole life, and it absolutely shattered your whole world, and you're literally a completely different person, and you don't even know how to act or how to even be a person at all. And then on top of that, all your closest friends and family are like absolutely abandoning you, and then people who do show up for you are not saying the right thing. It literally is the worst thing in the fucking world, and it feels like even more ending to the end of your world. Okay, and that's what that episode was about back in the day when we recorded that, because that shit is all true, and it still remains true. What my point is now, though, is that even though all those things were fucked up, here now, I still acknowledge all of those things. But I do want to acknowledge, too, that the people who at least stayed with me and still loved me through all of that, and at least tried to be there and didn't say anything super mean to me. I'm not talking about the people who like made me feel like shit on purpose. No, I'm talking about the people who literally were trying to be a good friend but didn't do it perfectly. You guys mean the absolute world to me, because that's literally all you can ask from anyone. So
Right.
even though I'm trying to make the 1 point in 6 million ways for the past 25 minutes, my point
Here's
is
the
that,
point, guys. The point takeaway. The key.
what is it? Because now I don't even know.
The key point is.
The point is that there is really only one right way to support a grieving person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to do something, do anything.
Doesn't matter how you feel like it's going to be interpreted. Doesn't matter if you think you're going to say the wrong thing. Just trying to be there and just doing anything to be there says so much about how much you care about this person. You're willing to fuck up and make mistakes because you care about this person and you would do anything to make them feel good. I think that we as people often have a very self-involved outlook in life, and that's probably a part of our ego, is that we don't want to come across a certain way. We're constantly worrying about how we're being perceived.
We don't want to make mistakes.
We don't want to make mistakes, but we have to put that aside and put that person first, especially when the loss is fresh, and especially if they're your close friend, family member, etc. In those times, we need to learn how to, one, not take things personally, and two, allow people to be a priority when they need to be. Because one thing that I learned in relationships is that it's not always going to be 50-50. It's not always going to be you give and you take, and it's a constant equal balance. It's just that sometimes people need you more than you need them. And that's just how it goes. I mean, it's obviously going to go up and down. It's not okay when it's just stays one way and not the other. But obviously, in terms of grief, that person needs you more than they know, more than they know, and more than they can communicate. So in that time, you need you you need to step up. No, but as someone who loves that person, the best thing you could do is set your own worries aside, set your own ego aside, and step up and try to be there for that person as much as they can.
Exactly, yeah. The only way to truly fuck up when one of your close family members or friends are in need of love and support is to do nothing, because nothing in the needing person's eyes is that you just don't care enough, or you just don't think about them enough. And even though a lot of times those things aren't true, that person is thinking about you, they are caring about you, they do love you. But when that person does nothing, that is how you actually fuck up. That is actually how you do be in the wrong, because you can say years later that you intended to or that you wanted to, but just couldn't for some reason. But those are just words. What matters is actions.
True.
There you go. That was a wrap up I've been looking for an hour and a half.
Hey, anyway, guys, I know this episode was a little bit chaotic. I mean, forgive us. It's our first Zoom episode. We're trying to figure it out. You know, you're here with us along the journey. You're not here for perfection. You're here for Grief Uncensored. And yeah, it's been such a long break, but we're so happy to be back. Honestly, I'm ready to talk my shit. I'm ready for season 2. And there's just a lot of things coming your way that you should be excited for, including just hearing our voices every week. I'm just kidding. But no.
And our amazing guests. We're so excited.
Amazing guests.
The rest of our guests this season.
Amazing guests, more emotions, more tears, more cries, more. And yeah, that's what you have in store for season 2. Please be sure to go on our Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, all of the above. If you want to be a guest, you already know how, all that shit. So yes,
thank you guys so much for being here. We would not be doing this without you, or maybe we would, but it would definitely not feel as impactful. Thank you for being along this journey with us, and I hope that you're able to take something out of every single episode, whether you know it all speaks to you or some things you disagree with. We really just hope that even maybe a couple things you were able to take away and not feel alone anymore. But much love to everybody, and we will see you next week.
Bye.